Greetings, everybody. It is Dynasty Mirror Search for Huru. Thank you so much for joining us. As we always do before we get started, just want to thank you all for the support. Thank you. Just want to show our gratitude. You guys could be somewhere else on a Friday afternoon, but you are here with us. Also, make sure you go to dynastymirror.com. Again, go to dynastymirror.com. Buy the gear, merchandise, books, go and support. Also, make sure you subscribe to our email list while you're there. Like, share, and subscribe to the content. Again, like, share, and subscribe to the content. You know, we really would appreciate your support. We have Mr. Patrick Flomo on with us today. And today's topic, because, you know, I've been to Liberia myself. Liberia has a very interesting history. You know, I think Black Americans should be more involved in Liberia because at the end of the day, that was a country that was founded by us. But, you know, for some reason, we just love Ghana. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. We've had this conversation before briefly, but never really went in depth in regards to the name of the capital, Monrovia, which was named after James Monroe, who was a slave owner, from my understanding. And so people are like, why would we name Monrovia? Why? Why not change the name? Mr. Flomo.
Thank you.
If you go ahead and introduce yourself and where you're from, and let's go ahead and address, should we change the name of the capital of Liberia?
Thank you very much. And I want to tell the audience, thank you very much. I am deeply delighted and honored to be here and to take up the question of the name Monrovia being changed. Whatever it's going to be, I do not know. But however, I have written an article suggesting the name to be changed because it was named in the honor of a slave master, James Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, I do not think that it is appropriate for us to continue to honor a man who enslaved our brothers and sisters for over 200 years. And today we have him as honoring him as president. Our capital city, Liberia, Monrovia. So that the argument on is that we need to change, or we need to have a discussion on the appropriateness of having to honor a slave master as our name of our capital.
What would you suggest the name be changed to if it were up to you?
On a personal level, I would say that when the colonists arrived in Liberia, or actually when Elijah Eries and Robert Stockton went to Liberia in 1820, it was formerly called the Green Coast, before it became Liberia in 1847. They negotiated with the natives, and the natives who they negotiated with were the Bassa and the Day people.
Mm-hmm.
The area that they settled or was negotiated for the free American slaves who were to return to what is present-day Liberia was called by the Dade and the Bassa people Ducor. So we had a name. There was
like
a
the
name
Ducor,
for the
like the
area.
Ducor Hotel, like the Ducor Hotel.
Well, yeah. I mean, even in the 20th century, we had multinational corporations that came to Monrovia, to Liberia, and built one of the most luxurious hotels in West Africa. And they took the name Ducor,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of surprising to most people. Why would they name the most famous, beautiful hotel, luxurious hotel in Monrovia, Ducor, rather than another Western name that is supposed to be? And here we are, the citizens of Liberia. We have our capital city in the name of James Monroe, which is to me, again, is an anathema to our race, to our human dignity, for the fact that the slave institution was a dehumanizing effect for Black people. And it began with the transatlantic slave trade between 14th, 16th, when the Portuguese began to import slaves out of Africa and also into the Americas.
Now, can you give us a little bit, tell us a little bit about, give us some information, your background, like you're Liberian, but like where exactly in Liberia?
I am a Liberian residing in the United States. I am originally from the part of Liberia, and I'm from is Lofa County in the district of Zozo, Yela. And I do live here in Columbus, Ohio. I'm a business person here. I do visit Liberia every year. I have some interesting activities going on in my village called Yela.
Okay, guys, as you come to the chat room, please hit that like button, please share, and please subscribe as well. Now, as far as the history of Liberia, as you would interpret it, like, what are your thoughts on it? If you want to go ahead and go into detail in regards to the founding of Liberia.
Well, Liberia has a unique history in the context of the African continent, for the fact that it is the only country in Africa, aside from Ethiopia, that was quote unquote so-called not colonized.
Not colonized. Okay.
Not colonized. But again, that is a different story. However, there's some colonization that took place within the context of Liberia itself. However, it was founded in 1821 and for the American free slaves. Let me backtrack and say that this was made possible by the American Colonization Society, founded by Robert Finley in 1816.
Robert Finley, who's buried, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Robert Finley, he is buried in Athens, Georgia, at the University of Georgia. He was supposed to be president of the university, but he passed away. So
there you go.
Interesting fact, I found out about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and the American Colonization Society had membership that were made up of all white men, members of the upper class, and the majority of these people or these members were slave owners. And you have Andrew Jackson, you have Booker Washington, you had Henry Clay, you have Booker Washington, and also you had Francis Scott Key. Among the prominent members of the American Colonization Society, which was also included by James Monroe, every one of them, with the exception of Daniel Webster, everyone were a slave master. The ACS motivations for the free Black here in America to leave was out of fear of the slave uprising that has already taken place in Haiti and was now beginning to percolate within the American continent, especially the American South itself. The most famous one is the Tunnel Uprising in Virginia, where James Monroe was governor of Virginia for almost 5 different terms before he became president of the United States. And so they were putting together the free slaves because they could not afford to have free slave and slave within the same proximity and the same environment, for the fear that the free slave who stayed while free and not having anything to do, they may encourage slave uprising of those who were stay enslaved. So for that reason, they were trying to get rid of these free people, they call them so-called free people, from among the enslaved people. So the ACS motivation was not because of the fact that they were against the abomination of slavery or the slave institutions. And again, to look at the racism that was involved, you can see that Frederick Douglass, who was the most famous abolitionist in American history, was not invited. In fact, there were no Black abolitionists, or there were no free Black who were members of the American Colonization Society. So it was all pure white. These people put together so that they can get rid of the free slave among their slaves for fear of slave uprising. And they were able to have a successful immigrations of a few Black people to Liberia in 1820, 1821. So this is how Liberia came about. And, well, they got settled in Liberia for the first 39 years from 1821 to 1839. We had a Commonwealth period. And at that time, it was still controlled by the American Colonization Society. And around 1846, there was rumbling for independence because of commercial reasons. The colonists, the settlers were not in favor of the British and the French trading with the natives and whatnot. So they decided that they needed to have taxations on the British ships, and the French and the British government said, no, you are not a recognized country. You cannot do so. And they went ahead and declared themselves independence. And with the blessings of Queen Victoria, who was the first country to recognize Liberian independence. So that's how we came about in 1847 in the nutshell.
Okay, so the argument is, if Liberia was never colonized, why did they declare independence? That's the argument.
That's a very good question, and I have written several articles on the so-called Liberian independence. That it is quite different from other African independence. The Kenya had to fight for their independence, looking at the Mau Mau society.
Right.
The Ghana had to fight for their independence, even though it was not a bloody independence, but several permanent Ghanaian had to go into prison. Among them was Kwame Nkrumah. Right. And you have Algeria, who fought for independence for so long to get their independence from France. So our independence was not an independence that to say we had to share blood for it. It was an independence given to us on a silver platter because of the fact that the colonies, the American Colonization Society, was figured that well, we need to give them self-rule so that they can now tax the British and the French businesses and whatnot. At least they can get some economic assistance to support themselves. So that it was basically economic, was not to say that we were fighting to free ourselves from the American Colonization Society. Even within the colony society, among the colonies themselves, time for the vote for independence, there was a division between themselves because the other group, like in other nations, one group wanted to continue with the relationship or the administration of the ACS, the American Colonization Society, over them. And other groups said no. Among them, who was Hillary Teach, our Thomas Jefferson, who was very instrumental in bringing about the Declaration of Independence and the Constitutions, was very advocate that Liberia must declare itself independence, and the ACS was willing to let go with that.
Now, what real role? Because when people think the ACS, they say American Colonization Society. Oh, that means Liberia was colonized. But from my understanding, like there were certain years that ACS didn't even have enough funding to support Liberia. So, what real role did the ACS play but outside of it being a dumping ground for freed slaves? Like, what role did the ACS play in the founding of Liberia?
Well, again, we have to go back to the ACS, its motivation from the beginning. Again, like I said, the ACS had three motivations, like as they said in history, but I can only really give credence to two. The three were: one, we want to get our free Black slaves who cannot find the human dignity and the rights of human being, the rights of citizenship in this country, to go to another place where they can exercise their full humanity. Second was that, they are educated, they are Christianized, and they will now take Christianity to Africa. At that time, they used to call Africa the Black Continent. And the third was that, we can have a place that since slavery has not been abolished, but yes, still we have illegal slavery going on, we can have our ships get on the sea and protect any ship that come in. They can intercept the ships and take those captured slaves. Well, we need a dumping ground so that we can have these people to be transported there and left them alone. So those were the three motivations of the ACS. Actually, it was, to me, I was in the two actually succeeded. One was, okay, getting the free blacks who wanted to leave to go to Liberia or to go to Africa to settle. And the second was a place where the American colonization society could continue to stop the importations of slavery, because slavery had now become illegal in the United States.
Like with Sierra Leone, as far as
Like, well, Sierra Leone was the British dumping ground for slavery. But again, it was in that same, in fact, Sierra Leone was the motivating factor for the abolitionists. They could make Sierra Leone the case that, look, this is possible. We can do that. The British have already done it. The British was the first to abolish slavery, and they began to get rid of the free slave out of Britain, because the free slave was also causing problems within the British context. So therefore, they wanted to find a place where they could have those free slaves to go. So Sierra Leone was organized. And once that was done, the abolitionists in America figured that, well, I think we can also do the same, to have a place where we can get rid of our free slave within this country, within the United States.
Now, as far as your background, are you America or are you an indigenous Liberian, or what?
Yes, I am an indigenous Liberian. I'm from Lofa County. The members who hail from that region of the country, they are all indigenous people from that end of the country. But however, I do not look at Liberia in the context of American Liberians and indigenous. I look at it from the context of one citizens, one people, and one group of people. But however, our history has been dominated by the settler or the American, the settlers or the American Liberians, and this is where some of us are now calling for what you call the regenerations of the Liberian history. In other words, we need to make Liberian history more than just the founding or the settlers, and look at the entire context of Liberia within the context of Africa. Where are we? Are we in Africa, or are we in some part of United States and right now within our own mind? So this is where some are now arguing that we need to find that defining moment for us to decide where we are, where we fit.
Okay. Now let's talk about before the coup. I mean, yeah, before the first coup. Like, explain, like, break down Liberia before the first coup. I mean, you had everybody coming to Liberia to learn. I mean, Liberia, from my understanding, was to set the standard on how a nation should be ran. Is that true? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
No. I will answer this question in two ways. Theoretically, yes, it was a model that other African countries could follow, but in practice, it was completed out. And I say that for two reasons. Number one, from 1847 until 1980, it was controlled by almost a single party. For 100 years, it was controlled by the Dewey Party. We call ourselves a democracy or a republic. And it is one-party system is almost an anathema to a one-party system, because a democracy is an organic form of government, because it has that ability to have counterbalance. And when you do not have counterbalance, then you are not. So Liberia, in a sense that for almost 100 years, it was a single party, the Dewey Party that ruled the country. And we have one set of people, the ethnic, I mean, the American Liberians, that predominated the power center, which was economic, social, and education. They control all of that. In fact, it was only in the 1960s when the majority of the people were now beginning to get acclimated or get comfortable to get within the context of education and whatnot in Liberia. So until 1980, it was predominantly one-sided issue.
I mean, so you brought up as far as lack of access to education for the, I guess, the indigenous groups in Liberia. Now, were they willing to, before 1960, were they wanting to integrate into that system as far as when it comes to education and society, or was it opposite?
You have to look at it, you have to take it in the context that the Liberian had all of the decision-making power. The indigenous people were always willing to accept what were given to them.
Mm-hmm.
Education was very slow. By moving or having a broad education for the masses, for several reasons might be that they did not have the resources to educate the masses, and which I do not believe it was so. I think it was because of the fact that the more you have people educated, their minds are opened, and they will now begin to see the difference in how human being is supposed to live and the dignity of man, and now they will begin to challenge the system because the system was not living up to its principle, which was this is the land of liberty, and here we are. One group is being suppressed, and another group is having the liberty itself, and so this cannot be. So again, like I said, in the 1960s was when mass education began to flourish in Liberia, and this also happened too within the context of when the 60s were called the year or the decade of Africa.
Right.
Africa was now beginning to emerge on the world stage. Colonialism was collapsing everywhere. In the United States, you had civil rights movement was now fighting for social justice and equality within the United States. And Liberia itself was also caught up in that look, you cannot continue to suppress the masses of the people without education. And the United States was at that time very much influential in helping to fund huge educational programs to Liberia, and I'm a beneficiary of one of that period.
So let's see here now. As far as indigenous having it, like, so in order to gain action, shout out to Great African in the chat room. He's like from Liberia, Nimba County, I think. Great.
Yeah, Nimba County. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was saying, and I've heard this before, as far as if the indigenous wanted to, oh, did we lose him? Are you there, brother? Okay. In order for indigenous to gain access to education, they had to change their names. Now, I've heard two sides of it. I heard two different. I heard that they chose to change their names, and then some say they were forced to change their names. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was not a policy of the government. It was never a policy of the TUI party government that you need to change your name to be able to get this access to this or access to that. You have to look at it in a context that most of the indigenous people who were now being introduced into having the opportunity to attend school to get education. In the early days, those individuals were almost like what you had in the United States, the servants of the masters. So these indigenous people will come to be the houseboy or the yard boy for an American top of middle class American Liberian family. And once you are there, it automatically you take on the name of who the family that you are with. So if I went to live with the Benson, my name would be automatically Benson. I was not forced to do so, but that was the custom. So it was not a policy, but it became almost like a custom. And that was all throughout until 1980, when I would say that the masses had an epiphany, and also so-called, the quote-unquote revolutions, and most people who name were changed, they decided to go back to get to their original name. But again, it was never a government policy that your name have to be changed or you need to change your name Benson or to Tolbert or to Tubman for you to be able to have this or not.
Okay.
But it was an access to get to the door.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. Great African said basically to get a good job, you have to lie in.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
Okay. All right, guys. Make sure you hit that like button again. Make sure you hit that like button. Also, too, if you want to call in, here is the link to the email. Okay, let me ask you: do you the coup of 1980, which was the first coup, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Was that a mistake?
I will answer that question in two ways. I was not in favor of the coup. I was never in favor of the coup. And my reason for that is the history of the African coup has never benefited the Africans or the people in those countries. Ghana, for example, Nigeria, for example. So for that reason, when we had our coup, and I said, well, yes, it has happened, but this is the greatest mistake that we have done. So I was never in favor of the coup. What I was advocating for, I mean, as a high school student in the 1960s, and then graduating in the 1970s, and then looking at what was happening, was the fact that, look, we had now a political reformation going on in Liberia. And this political reformation was that for the first time, PAL had now become a party. So we had a two-party system during the Tolbert government. And with that, some of us who were most liberal-minded people were pushing for the fact that, okay, now that we have two-party system, let us wait for the election to come so that we can challenge the two party into a general election and let the people decide. Unfortunately for us, some were extremely progressive and others who were looking for an evolutionary goal were not successful. The radical were able to succeed, but there was a long arm of the coup, which again, I always say that it was not a Liberian coup, it was a foreign coup. The people who were instigating it, well, they were never able to do it. But again, that is where I usually argue for. But I was never originally wanting a coup to take place, looking at the history of coups in Africa as a whole. But that's my take on the coup of 1980. And we can see today what has happened since the coup of 1980. However, I would say that despite that, the major benefit that we have gotten out of the coup is what I call the free exercise of the mind for people to freely debate issues that you are not threatened. We could not do that freely in the 1960s. We could not do that freely in the 1950, you could forget about that. But in the 1960s, you could not do that under the Tubman administration. Under the Tolbert administrations, we began to have some free exercise of freedom.
Can I interject? Can I interject right there?
Yes.
You just said something interesting. You said you couldn't do that under Tubman, but yet Tubman was the indigenous people are the ones who put Tubman into power, and kept him in the power. They love Tubman. They still celebrate his holiday to this day. Tolbert, right, appeased you, gave you what you want, all the free freaks, and what did he get for it? He got shanked and carved up and murdered and butchered like a pig for all the things he done to bring you a thing. And then you're sitting here telling us that the coup was necessary.
No.
Thing about this this whole thing about changing the name and stuff like that, it started when they start seeing the names and stuff coming down in America. So Liberia said, now it's our chance to go ahead. It's not this is Monroe. They want to change the name of Liberia. They want to change the flag. They want to rip up everything the American Liberians and all these so-called American Liberians did. They want to destroy everything. There was already a plan by the Crew tribe to rename certain buildings that were built like the E.J. Roy building. They want to rename that. You know, so it's not just Dufour. That's just one. That's one thing. They want to erase the history.
Yeah, may I? Okay. I never said that the coup of 1980 was necessary. I had never said that. Please don't take my word out of context. I have always maintained that the coup of 1980 was not necessary. I was never for the coup, but it happened.
But everybody, almost every Liberian I talked to, right? They basically say that the coup was necessary. And the bottom line is this right here is just a continuation of that coup. I want to understand something.
Yeah.
When you have a lot of I know a lot of Liberians, so you can't preach me. You know that, right? I know a lot of Liberians. I'm in a lot of Liberian forums, right? I've been studying Liberian history for 30 years, you know? And the main thing they keep talking about is the founding of the country. Now, we're just talking about the founding of the country. Do you know that the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, that's French, right? Guinea,
Yes.
right? That's French, right? They're going on, right? Lagos, you know what the word Lagos comes from?
Portuguese.
That's a
land of
Portuguese
lakes,
name,
right?
That's a Portuguese name.
Cameroon. So is Cameroon, right? South Africa, right? That's not African terminology. So what I'm saying is this, though. Instead of talking about Monroe, why don't you celebrate the people who were joyous that they were able to finally have liberty in the land of their ancestors? So they gave them credit at the time, saying, okay, we're going to name this after President Monroe because he financed and gave them that extra push and support. Because without which, right, Liberia would never have been founded. Because remember something, the slave trade was still going on at the time. Without the U.S. Navy, the safe passage across the Atlantic, slave ships could be people repatriating to Liberia could have been recaptured and sold back into slavery. So they gave Monroe a respect, saying thank you for securing our liberty. Now you want to take that and throw it up, right? And then not only that, let's talk about something. Those people built a country right, with their own memory. The architecture you see, the buildings, everything was from memory. No white man came there and built that for them. You know, let's talk about Elijah Johnson. Let's talk about Hillary Teague. Let's talk about all these great men, the African Masonic Order, all these people who came there and they started apprenticeship with the Congo recaptures, right? The Congo recaptures said, look, I see what you guys are trying to do. Let's build this republic. They saw the vision. A lot of indigenous people on the coast.
Carl, let him talk, Carl. Let him talk.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you again. Again, we are in a period of a liberal awakening of the Black pride. And some of us
it's
are
tribalism,
advocating...
bro. It's not Black pride. That's not Black. That's tribalism.
Well, let me finish. Some of us are advocating now, following the people, our forefathers, our brothers before, people like Steve Biko in South Africa, who
it's not
was
the same situation.
Let me finish. Who was talking about Black consciousness, the inferiority of how white look at Black. We are following people like Marcus Garvey in this country, what he was trying to do with the African Back to Africa movement. We are talking about Edwin Bladden, one of Pan-African, the father of Pan-Africanism. When he went to Liberia from the islands, became president of the Liberian College, he challenged the Liberian system. He said, this system is not working for the benefit of all.
Yeah, but also, Edward Wilmot, hold up. Let's say, let me make some. Edward Wilmot Blyden also believed that Black people as a race weren't ready for republicanism. He wanted Liberia to merge with Sierra Leone and Nigeria at the time and become one thing. And
that was
on culture.
But yeah, he was a pioneer. He was a pioneer, just like Nkrumah came later, asking for the continent of Africa to unite.
You can't ask Nkrumah made a mistake because he cannot.
We understand that. I do understand that, my brother, that this is the evolutions and the progress of the human mind. Every society makes a mistake, and the next generation
a major mistake.
Yes, the next generation comes along and try to rectify and improve
Yo, bro,
on that.
but
The
what we're saying
United
now
States,
is, let me
the,
say
the
something.
United States.
Collar, let him finish, Collar. Collar, let him finish. Let him finish, Collar. I mean, you gotta let him finish. Mr. Patrick.
The fact that the Civil War was a major mistake because of the South to keep Black people in bondage. So they had to fight a 4-year war that took 600.
Mr. Patrick. Guys, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you share and subscribe. We got lost you, Mr. Patrick. Hey, Willa. All right, go ahead, Collar. We'll wait for Patrick to come back on.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is that this is a problem. I'm saying, because like I said, even before when he started talking, right? All due respect to the brother, right? They're trying to rediscover Garvey now, 100 years later. Do they understand what Garvey, his plan for Liberia was back then? You know,
What was it?
he was basically like going to be like, okay, this is the way it is. Boom, boom, boom. Even the people who were Pan-Africans thought Garvey's plan was too radicalized because they knew the nature of the indigenous people would resist. Henry McNeil Turner went to several different tribes on the coast of Africa. They didn't want to hear the stuff about Republican form of government, Black people running government. They were happy with the arrangement they had with the British. And Liberia right now, there's a guy that put up a post saying they wish, a good poll among indigenous people say they wish they were colonized by the British, right? Instead of these so-called. It all has to do with hatred of the so-called settlers and the slave descendants who came back, right? They could do no wrong. They could do no right. The fact that they built colleges, right? The College of West Africa, both indigenous and Africans, African American, Caribbeans went there. You know, Ricks University, Cullington, Tubman University. There was nothing but indigenous and settler children going to school for generations, right? So when they come with this lie that they didn't get education, a lot of people didn't get education because the paramount chiefs were threatened by this new idea of liberalism and stuff like that. When you talk about freedom of speech, did they have freedom of speech in the villages? No, they didn't. They had to listen to the indigenous chiefs under the pain of death. So, but yet when they talk about, they didn't have all these rights among this American Liberian society, right? Let's talk about the rights they didn't have under their tribal society, you know? And we were trying to say, okay, with this comes education, rule of law. I said this all the time. I asked a brother the other day, I said, what do you see when you talk about a citizen? He said, well, a citizen means you have this, you get this, you get this. Okay, now, when you talk about a citizen in a republic, the idea of republic is like 5,000 years old, but it hasn't really taken root in Africa, a continent that claims that Egypt was part of Africa, but Egypt was the first republic, right? The republic means laws, right? You have your allegiance and your sovereignty and everything is aligned with the state of the republic, right? So if you don't do that, right, you can't be a citizen, right? So therefore, you have to educate people. That's why they built colleges, to tell people this is where we're at. This is our borders. This is the enemy out there, the Europeans who want to colonize us, right? This is what happens with us, 400 years of slavery. A lot of Africans don't even reference slavery and the fact that it's happening now again, and the exploitation. You see what happened in the Congo and stuff like that.
Okay, my brother.
Hold on.
Hold a minute. My brother, let me again. I don't know where you get your history from, but again, I don't want to say that what you're saying are not fact. However, you are all over the map. But again, what I am alluding to, or what I'm advocating, what some of us are now doing, we are following the footsteps of how we, the black race, can regain our dignity and our sense of honor. In 1884, 1885, I do know, the Berlin Conference. It is where the African continent was divided by the Europeans. And at that conference, there was not a single African chief or town that was invited. Liberia was an independent state in Africa. They were not invited to say, look, we are going to carve up Africa and you are now invited to sit to the table. No, we were not. And this is why today, some of us are saying that the legacy of colonization is evil. It is gone. But we should not continue to honor and to continue to have them within our midst. I have written against the Nigerian parliament that sits there and wear a wig, white wig. I said, what are you coming from? Why are you wearing a white wig? That's colonialism. That's the colonial master that gave you that. Why in 2020, you are in parliament as an independent state, you are wearing that? Again, come back to Liberia. The question of Liberia, we all have to agree. Liberia is a country that is not, the history should not only be the settlers or the Americo-Liberian.
Exactly.
The entire history of Liberia centers on the Americo-Liberian. The indigenous people are nowhere to be found within the context of Liberian history as they taught. Is that what we want to accept?
Oh, let me ask you a question. Right? Where are your so-called indigenous people? Because I know the history of the indigenous people, and as far as like, remember something. Liberia is talking about a republic, right? A republic. So let's not talk. Let's forget about the fact that the two major indigenous families in Liberia were the Masakois and the Fambulas. You know, like you completely left them out, right? If it wasn't for them and whatnot, you know, if it wasn't for the Vai tribe, right, who joined Liberia, which everyone was blind screwed up in the Galenas, right?
Well,
Liberia,
okay. I think
Let me just say this.
You are missing.
Let me just interject. Let me interject.
Hold on. One second.
Hold on.
You are missing the point here. You are missing the point here. I'm missing the point here.
Hold on 1 second.
Let me just let me interject.
Hold on. Okay, Patrick, go ahead. I'm gonna pass it to Great Africa.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let me. You see, when we talk about Liberia, if we really want to be succinct about Liberian history, we have to put it in a context of historical period. Now, I don't know what period you're talking about. Okay, when you say the Vai of Masakois and what, I do not know what period you're talking about. Liberian history is divided into 3 sections. You have the Commonwealth period. First, you had the colonial period. Then you had the Commonwealth period. Then you had the Republican period that started in 1847 until 1980. Now, today we are talking about a so-called Second Republic, which I don't give any credence to. So I do not know what period you are talking about. So if you can put that into historical context to say this group or that group is, I will be able to follow you. But again, I come back to my original argument, and which is that Liberian history should not only be the history of the Americo-Liberian. It should be the history of the Liberian people as a whole, not just one. Yes, they are factor. They are the original modern history of Liberia. But Liberia existed before the settlers came. And the entire history of that, and since 1847, in fact, 1964 was when the Aborigines became almost part of the citizenry. So again, Liberian history is, when you argue this, you need to put that into the historical context. Let me stop there because my brother wants to say something.
All right, Great African. Let me unmute you, Great African.
Okay, hey. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity. Kala, you're my brother. You know I love you. And we're gonna do some business. I already adopted you. You're from Nimba County. However, and Mr. Flomo, you're either from Nimba, Bong, or Lofa, one of the 3.
I am from Lofa.
Okay. So, but here's the thing, Kala. One thing is this: we have to look at the history of Liberia and be very, very clear and concise. The first thing is the motto of Liberia. The fact that indigenous people were excluded from Liberia is simple. The motto of the country as it stands today is the love of liberty brought us here. Okay. Well, from an indigenous Liberian perspective, we were already there. So the love of liberty met us here. You understand? Now, nobody's perfect. The indigenous people, like some of our indigenous chiefs, okay, they had issues and they fought with the American Liberians because some of them were involved in the slave trade. Okay, that's not a history that we will be proud of, but it's an ugly part of Liberian history. And as an indigenous Liberian, I acknowledge it and I accept it. But to whitewash it, to say that, oh, you know, the Americans came in with a development plan that was all inclusive, when I myself, I wouldn't know how to speak English or even know how to read and write if it wasn't for a Methodist church that set up a mission close to where I live, because it was never meant to be inclusive of the entire area that was claimed. Only areas that was settled by settlers had infrastructure. And that is a fact. This is not something to be argued, but we're moving forward from that. You understand? I'm a proud Liberian. For me personally, the best Liberian president was Tolbert. That's just my opinion. Yes. Tolbert, the conspiracy that you talk about with Tolbert and then putting all the blame on the indigenous people because you had a guy that was a little bit more liberal and then we killed him. The fact is, Tolbert was killed because he got into some geopolitical stuff. He became the head of the AOU, okay, and then he denounced the
Palestinians, the Palestine.
Yes,
Palestine,
yes. He gave a speech talking about the Palestinians have a right to self-determination. So then now the CIA used that as a context because you were going against Israel. Yes. Okay, he was going against Israel. So then they brought in Dole, and Dole knew that all he had to do was renounce Muammar Gaddafi. All he had to do was re-establish diplomatic relationship with Israel, and then that he would be in good standings with the United States and with the West. So Tolbert was killed. There's no way that a semi-literate 11th grade dropout master sergeant can actually take over a country.
6th grade.
Let's be real about that.
And so let me add to this here. That's what I said in the initial conversation, that the coup was not a Liberian coup. And I continue to argue that at several debates. It was a foreign coup. And all because of what my brother had just alluded to, it was an international geopolitical issue that came about. Tolbert was the most progressive. And as I said before, that when Tolbert came in, we now had two-party system in Liberia. We who were looking at the evolutionary change in Liberia was hoping that Tolbert would have had an election whereby we would have a two-party system, but we failed. And the more radical side, and with the intervention of international politics, Tolbert was eliminated brutally. So I was never for the coup. The coup was not necessary.
I gotta say a couple things. I gotta say a couple things before I get off. What I like to do, Dinus, is come back on tomorrow night, and I have my partner, Sando Morris. This guy is a scholar. Him and I are doing. He invited me to be part of a documentary on Liberia. You know, a documentary. You know, showcasing my novel "Journey to the Promised Land" about the exodus of 1878 from Charleston to Liberia. Among the ship, the Azor. That's the ship the Tolbert family came on. I wrote the novel, right?
That's
so basically
that's all nice.
Basically, I'm going to
again. That's all nice and yeah. I will look for you tomorrow. I'll be happy to come back on.
I disagree. I disagree with what you say about the coup. I understand people want to. It's a horrible thing, hindsight, but at the moment, at the time, there was like 8 men put on a pole. And the whole entire Monrovia came out and cheered.
Yes, because
innocent men
my brother,
did nothing, that was this idea that the CIA,
my brother, that was the evil time.
That was the CIA. The CIA. Listen, let me give you
I don't believe it.
Let's go back to 1979.
My brother, let me bring you back.
Take responsibility.
Let me bring you back. Let me bring you back to today. Look. Like I said, every nation has made a major tragic mistake in their existence. No nation is perfect. Yes, I would agree that 1980, yes, terrible thing happened in the country. Not every Liberian that supported that idea or that kind of brutality that took place. It was senseless. But the motivation behind it and what was encouraging it, some of us say do not know, but it happened. However, it has happened, and there is no way we can do it. What we do now, we who are living today, how can we correct what has happened so that we can have a republic and a country that calls itself liberty, that the people can exercise what it means to have a liberty. That is liberty to be free from poverty, to be free from ignorance, to be free from malnutrition, and to be free from it. This is what we are talking about, and to have the history itself corrected. The history of Liberia, my argument is that the history of Liberia should not only be the history of the settlers or the American Liberian.
Exactly.
It should be the history of the Republic of Liberia. And for that, some of us will continue to argue. And I do not subscribe to the fact that any American Liberian can say that, look, the naming of Monrovia as an honor, a slave master, it is valid, it is unique, and I will take that. I do any rational American Liberians, there is no way I think they can argue that. We
Exactly.
can have it, we can compromise, we can come with a name that we all can be said, but we do not want to have to be the republic in this world that have a slave master name in our honor. Would Germany say that Hitler, they would name Berlin Hitler? No way.
Exactly. So look, at the end of the day,
the Confederate flag, Confederate flag, the Confederate statues are coming down. These are the legacy of slavery.
Like I said, okay, now that's fine. That's fine. Okay, that's fine. Now, if you, like I said, if you wanted to, you had a chance in the 1940s to be your independent state. You could have joined with Guinea, right? You know, they said no, they didn't want to. They want to be part of Liberia.
What do you mean 1940? I don't know what you're talking about now. I don't know what you're talking about.
Lofa could have been part of Guinea.
What was that again?
In the 1940s, when there was a reunion, remember there's two Liberians. The real Liberians on the coast, right? The hinterland was controlled by the Frontier Force.
Yeah,
you had a chance. You had a chance to join Guinea, right, in Ivory Coast, but you chose to be part of Liberia. You said we love this.
I don't know. I do not know. I do not know.
No, we didn't have an option.
I don't know where you get that from. I don't know where you get that from. That Nimba County or the people in Nimba,
no,
did not agree to go to Guinea or to go to I don't know.
You could have. A lot of people in Nimba are from Guinea.
Well,
no,
Wait. You are mixing.
That's false history.
was born in the Ivory Coast.
You are mixing. No. Let me correct you. Let me give you the historical fact here. I just told you that.
False.
You know I'm telling the truth.
I just told you that. I just said to you.
Hold on.
I just said to you that.
Look, at the end of the day,
I'm coming. In 1884 and 1885, Liberia was the only country that had settled a border between Guinea, Ivory Coast, and Sierra Leone. The rest of the other, that was between the French and the British. The rest of the continent was carved up. The boundary that you are talking about, that this was it, no, those were artificial boundaries. We never had boundary between Guinea and Liberia before the Aborigines came. No, it was not there. We crossed one another. There was just a river we crossed. We were all one until the white man put an artificial boundary, say, oh, this is where you stop. This is where you stop. So I do not know where you get your history from, my brother.
Oh, that's what a republic is. A republic has boundaries. Do you understand that? A republic has boundaries. That's what defines a republic. You don't even know that, dude.
Listen, man. At the end of the day, here's the thing.
Yes,
we talking about James Monroe.
We can continue this tomorrow night. I really gotta go.
All right, thank you.
Okay, great afternoon. Go ahead.
So here's the thing: if we never would I have seen a day where Kala, okay, a straight up hardcore Black man, Black American son of Africa, would be supporting a name after a freaking slave master. Okay, it's hypocritical to say that we should take down a Confederate statue and then keep Monrovia as the name of the Republic of Liberia. Okay, it's not possible. It's not going to happen.
I think, and this, I don't mind the name change. I don't mind it at all. But I think what Carla's point is like, okay, does it stop at Monroe? Does it go?
So I understand. Carla thinks that basically is an attack against Americo-Liberians. Okay, and that's far from the truth. The fact is, more Liberians. Okay, Liberians are the most, are some of the most patriotic Americans, if that makes sense. Okay, Liberians are very proud of their American connections. Liberians are very, and that is a fact. I mean, we walk even at soccer games, we're flying American flags. So it's not an attack against Americo-Liberians per se, but it's the fact that our capital is named after a slave master. It is a fact that Liberia was founded to rid America of the most intelligent Black people in order to maintain the system of slavery here in the United States. They had to get rid of us because the Haitian Revolution happened. So then what happened is slave rebellions in the United States quadrupled, okay, after the Haitian Revolution. So they were like, man, look, we have to do something about these free Negroes walking around giving speeches and actually speaking proper English and reading and writing, because this whole notion of Black people being not being intelligent is not good for our system of slavery. That's why you have Henry Clay, okay, who was the Speaker of the House. There's a place in Liberia right now called Clay Ashland, named after Henry Clay from Kentucky. He was a slave owner Speaker of the House. Okay, so these are all historical things. But what we have to do is we have to reconcile our past and be proud of who we are. Because number one, guess what? We survived. We survived the struggle, the scramble for Africa. We remain a country that's been blessed with resources. We have to start thinking about development, but we cannot be marching under a Confederate flag, a Confederate banner, and then still have pride of being Black men and women. Okay, that's all it is. It's not about attacking our Americo-Liberian brothers and sisters at all.
Patrick, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Can y'all hear me?
I hear you, but I can't hear Patrick.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we can't just say on one hand, yeah, let's get rid of. Look, Americo-Liberian history in Liberia is undeniable. Okay, and is what it is. It's a country that was founded by Black Americans who left America and came back to Africa. That fact can never change, but it doesn't mean that we have to make the history into something that it wasn't. We have to reconcile it. We have to accept it and got to move on with life. But I think that, and I always maintain, Liberia represents the best opportunity for the Black man on this planet to actually make an investment.
Great. I'm going to start actually. So Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and I'm going to be spending some time in Liberia. I just because of just the history. I tell Black Americans, Liberia and Sierra Leone should be the focus, just because of the history and this the African fusion that I sense when I go there. I love Liberia and Sierra Leone.
Yeah, it's your home. It's your home. Your ancestors came there, and my ancestors were already there. So what's the big deal? You know. So we have issues. Of course, they're gonna have problems. Okay. But at the end of the day, if America can reconcile its ugly history, Liberia history can be reconciled and be even greater. It's simple.
Dang, Patrick, we can't hear you, brother. Damn, we can't hear you, Patrick. I want you to close out because we're about to close out because you are a special guest. Patrick, log out and come back in. I would say log out and come back in and see what happens. There we go.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what it is, man. I'm a proud, patriotic Liberian, regardless of whatever the history of Liberia is, because you can't be a proud American. Like people are like fly the American flag and all of that with all the ugly history. So yeah, we had our conflicts, but you know what? Right now, we're all about peace and we're all about development. That's what we're working towards. But we can't whitewash our history and act like one group of people was evil versus the other. Yes, things happen. Okay, but let's talk about today. And then let's plan for the future, because we can't be in the future and start to think about the future.
Okay. 1 second. Let me bring one more caller in. Hold on. Don't hang up, Great Africa.
Okay.
We'll stay on like 15 more minutes. Let's see here. All right. I just sent the link. ADOS. I can't ever pronounce it. Patrick, can you there?
Yeah. Can
Okay,
you
we
hear
hear you now. We hear you now, Patrick. Go ahead.
Okay. Again, before I got cut, I got off. I was trying to add to my brother's statement with like Liberian founding. And something we have to look at the historical context. When the people say that, when most people say the American Liberia founded Liberia, I usually tend to argue technically that no, this was organized by the American Colonization Society, which was made up of a majority of slave owners.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, you understand, Liberia was a dumping ground for slaves.
Exactly.
But it isn't like we can't sit here and pretend that the ACS, number one, they barely had any funding, and then number two, we can't sit here and pretend like they just had complete control and that they were.
They did not. But I'm saying that they were able. The idea came from them, and they were able to, with the help of other.
The thing is, let's just say this. There was a plan that was concocted by the devil, but good overcame evil.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? So that's what it is.
That.
So
Yeah.
at the end of the day,
I don't want to argue the technicality involved in it. That's quite true. We agree on that, and both of us agree on the whole concept here. But my argument has always been that look, here we are. This is a moment of Black awakening. This is a moment that we need to reconcile our history, our ugly side of the history. We need to come to terms with Liberia so that Liberia can live up to its principle that this is a republic and it's land of liberty. If we have to adhere to that, we have to live up to that. Then we need to reconcile with our past ugliness and reunify ourselves and our efforts to have a true republic rather than what we have experienced in the past 100 and some more years.
Okay, we got Lizzie. Lizzie, go ahead, Lizzie. Yeah, because my thing when it comes to ACS, I just feel as if we give the ACS way too much credit. Then
we do.
Yeah, we do. You're right.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Lizzie. Lizzie, you got to turn off the playback, Lizzie. Lizzie.
Why didn't after the coup?
Lizzie, you got to turn off the playback, Lizzie.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Why didn't after the coup?
Your mic is off.
Lizzie.
I think we lost her.
No, she muted herself. But Lizzie will be the last caller. Then we'll close out. Last question. Then we'll close out. Are African Americans welcome into Liberia, and is it safe? Absolutely. I was just there. I was just in Liberia in December. Loved it. I'll be back this December.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So, great African dropped off. Lizzie, I don't know what's going on with Lizzie. So, what we'll do, we'll go ahead and close out. Patrick, what would you like to share?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, no problem. All right, everyone. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Make sure you. In fact, let me just try to unmute Lizzie. Okay, so I don't know. She muted herself. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you go to dynastymir.com. Again, go to dynastymir.com. Until next time, family, Dynasty Mirror, search for Huru. Peace. But yeah, of course, everyone's welcome to Liberia. Yes, Black Americans are welcome to Liberia. I'll be back hopefully in December.
Always.
All right. Peace.
Thank you. Peace.